Madame Lantzman, bonsoir. Hi.
Bonsoir.
Any thoughts on Jeneroux and losing another MP?
Well, I think you can ask those questions to Matt.
Why did you think to resign?
I don't know. I haven't seen the letter.
How much does that hurt you ahead of the votes? And do you still have full confidence in your leader?
I have full confidence in the leader, and we have full confidence that we're going to oppose this inflationary budget.
Do you think you're going to lose any more colleagues?
Okay, some breaking news that we've been following. As you saw there, Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Landsman offering not much of a comment there on the news that Matt Jeneroux is resigning as a Conservative Member of Parliament. Jeneroux, who's an Edmonton MP, released his resignation letter just as MPs began voting on a Conservative motion to reject the Liberal budget. The Alberta Conservative says he ran in the last election hopeful, but the outcome was not what he anticipated. And this all comes, of course, after another Conservative, Chris d'Entremont, left the party and joined the Liberal caucus the same day the government's budget was tabled. Lots to dig into with our reporter roundtable. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Mia Rabson is the Deputy Parliamentary Bureau Chief at the Canadian Press. And Joël Denis Bellavance is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. And all three of you are doing big rewrites of whatever you are going to file today to deal with this. Bob Fife, the budget is now like what, the number 3 headline of the week. I mean, what do we make of this resignation on the heels of the defection?
Well, it's very interesting. In his letter, Mr. Jeneroux praises Pierre Poilievre before the election, but after the election, there are no. That statement of his makes no mention of praise for Pierre Poilievre. He also says that he needs to spend time with his family. There's a backstory that we all know in this city, that there has been a lot of pressure that was put on by the Conservative Party on Mr. Jeneroux, pressure that quite a number of Conservative MPs are very upset about, because that's not the way to treat another colleague. And that means who's next. And as one very senior Conservative said to me, and I'll read it right now, when Pierre Poilievre loses MPs like Jeneroux, you know there's big trouble brewing.
Right.
And there is going to be fallout from what happened to Mr. Jeneroux.
When you talk about pressure to not cross the floor?
Pressure to not cross the floor.
To join the Liberals.
So his choice was, if I'm not going to cross the floor because of unhappiness with the style of leadership of Pierre Poilievre, I can't stay in this caucus any longer because of the way I've been treated, so I'm going to resign.
It's quite a moment, Mia. 2025 continues to surprise me, and I kind of felt that was impossible at this point. I mean, what are your thoughts on this and where it leaves things for the Conservatives?
The year is still young. There's
true.
many more things that will probably surprise us the way this year's gone. I mean, the timing of this is incredible, right? I mean, we have a budget speech from the opposition leader yesterday, the day after he lost one MP. And then today, it seemed like maybe the dust had settled a little bit, like there wasn't seeming to be, people sort of were pulling back from the notion that there was going to be another flood of floor crossers. And now we see this sudden resignation from, a moderate MP from Alberta, a well-liked MP, somebody who, he may not be a household name for many Canadians, but within the Conservatives, he was respected as much as I know. It's a big blow to Mr. Poilievre. I mean, he clearly was rattled yesterday in the House of Commons when he forgot to introduce the Conservative amendment to the budget. He's not focused, obviously, on what he should be focused on. This is distracting for them, and that's never going to be good news for the Conservatives. I agree with Bob. The fallout of this is going to continue.
JD, your initial reactions?
Well, the question I ask myself is, who's next? Who's going to be looking at the door and maybe try to quit the party, leave the party, join the Liberals? I'm convinced that this is not obviously the end of the story, and then it will provoke more thinking than stop the bleeding that we have seen so far. I think if they had stopped the losses at one MP, they could have gone through the week and maybe go through this crisis. But this second MP, as Mia mentioned, sort of a more progressive, conservative MP from Edmonton, this is probably going to force other MPs to think about their future. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about people thinking about the future over the next coming hours.
So Matt Jeneroux, I mistakenly said earlier on the show that he was elected in 2011. He was elected in 2015. Edmonton Riverbend, he won that in the last election. but narrowly, for an Alberta Conservative seat. 50.2% of the vote for him to 44.8% of the vote to the Liberals, right? Which is an interesting thing. 30,300 and change to 27,000 and change votes. So, Bob, this is a seat that who knows where things will be when there is inevitably the by-election there, but it wasn't a slam dunk for the Conservatives in their heart.
No, you're absolutely right. There is a possibility under Mark Carney's leadership, given the fact that he's from Alberta, given the fact that he's moved the Liberal Party to the centre, given the fact that he's being hell-bent on trying to get resource development and LNG facilities out. He hasn't committed yet to another oil pipeline for reasons because there's no real proponent. But they have a good chance if he gets a centre-right Liberal to run in Edmonton. There's very good possibility that he could win that riding. And you know, it comes back again to there's a style of leadership with Mr. Poilievre that doesn't work anymore. Before the election, when he was riding high in the polls, he put a noose around everybody's neck and pulled it. But he lost the election that he was supposed to win. He lost his seat in Ottawa that he should have easily have won, particularly for a leader. And he's trying to loosen up a bit, but he still has a style of leadership that you see in the case of Mr. Entermont, who's saying, look, I don't like this, the way he operates as a leader. And I'll tell you, what's happened to Mr. Jeneroux is going to have repercussions within inside the caucus. There's going to be a real fallout from this. I just sense it.
It's interesting. Chris D'Entremont, and look, the Atlantic Canadian Tory tradition. I'm not even going to call it a Conservative tradition because it's like they're Tories, right? They're PCs in a lot of cases. The gap between them and the Liberals is not large. And so I'm not saying it's easy, Mia, for someone like Chris D'Entremont to cross to the Liberals. But man, it is not unheard of in the part of the country where I am from, right? You know, there is not this big gap in ideology. You go farther west, it gets a whole lot starker and a whole lot harder, right? And this is part of the challenge maybe Mr. Jeneroux might have faced it, even if he was willing to cross.
I'm not sure that he was ever really going to cross.
I don't know, but like that's part of
what... He certainly was thinking about it, but
yes,
I'm not sure he was
for sure. But like Chris D'Entremont stands a much better chance of being reelected than maybe a floor crosser would in Alberta, was kind of the point I was building to.
I mean,
right?
yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that he would face a tougher time as a Liberal. I would argue that both the Carney Liberals would have a better chance in Edmonton than the Trudeau Liberals.
Oh, yes.
I think it is worth noting that Melanie Joly said yesterday they had been trying to court Chris D'Entremont for 5 years. He did not cross to that party. He didn't consider it really while Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister. Within 6 months of Mark Carney, he's over the floor. So I think the distance between those Atlantic Tories, as you called them, and the Carney Liberals is even more narrow than before the election. And in Edmonton in particular, I think that distance is also more narrow. During the election, there was a period of time where the Liberals could possibly have won 5 or 6 seats. I mean, that didn't end up coming out that way, but they were competitive, a little more competitive in Alberta than they have been in the past. So it wasn't impossible for Matt Jeneroux to potentially win as a Liberal. He's made the calculation for a number of reasons that he's just going to resign. He's not. It seemed he's just like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. I'm done. I'm out. It's not worth it. And that losing an MP like Matt Jeneroux is a big problem for Mr. Poilievre.
The current turmoil that he's hitting the Conservative Party brings you to focus how a leader treats the caucus and how the caucus reacts in terms of loyalty. And that brings me back to how Brian Mulroney, the former PC, Progressive Conservative Prime Minister, treated his caucus. At the very low point when the GST debate and the recession, Mr. Mulroney's party was getting about 15% of the polls.
More people believed that Elvis was alive.
Exactly. But nobody left that caucus because their loyalty towards the leader. And that's, a reflection that maybe Mr. Poilievre should have. How do you treat your caucus so that your caucus is loyal in good time and in bad times? Now is the bad times, and because the way he treated the caucus, maybe other people will be tempted to jump ship as well.
Yeah, but to build on Bob's point earlier about the noose approach to leadership, and I then sort of layer that back onto the Atlantic Canadian reality. When Justin Trudeau was still the leader of the Liberal Party, Bob, the Conservatives are going to win 20 plus seats of the 32 in Atlantic Canada. Atlantic Canadian voters were not embracing his brand of conservatism. They were rejecting Justin Trudeau's brand of liberalism as it existed in 24-25. The minute that changed, it flipped back to an Atlantic Liberal power base.
You know, the biggest problem that Mr. Poilievre has had is that in Canada we need big tent parties. Because we're such a big country with a small population. And big tent parties have to have rooms for red Tories, for moderates, for right-wingers, for even for pro-life, you have to have a party that people feel comfortable in. You work out the differences. Mr. Poilievre wants only his way. And there's no room for red Tories, and obviously there's no room for somebody like Matt Jeneroux, who I wouldn't necessarily say he's a red Tory, but he's probably a moderate conservative from Edmonton. If there's no room for you in that party, that sends a terrible message to voters. We saw what happened when Mr. Carney became elected leader. All of that support just melted away.
Well, the divisions, Mia, that we saw with Mr. Poilievre and Premier Houston and Mr. Poilievre and Premier Ford, you know, we're seeing that now play out in his caucus to a degree. Right?
Absolutely, and I think one of the complaints we've heard multiple times as well is, especially since the election. Before the election, a lot of people, well, maybe before the Mark Carney's election to the leader, Conservatives were sort of willing to fall in line. They were willing to follow because the numbers were good. They were going to get into government, and then they would have their chance to figure things out. But nothing has changed since, and the complaints I've heard from some conservatives is that he's not listening, that the party brass, Poilievre and anyone around him, is not listening. They're not willing to open their mind to options and alternatives and alternate voices. They want to just keep doing what they've been doing, and it hasn't worked, and there's a lot of frustration, there's tension. Those kinds of divisions that we've seen outside. Now we sort of knew they always existed, but people were willing to kind of go along with it while they were winning. But now that they're not winning, they're no longer willing to give him that benefit of the doubt.
Well, a central quality of his leadership, JD, was control. Yeah. He controlled his caucus, he controlled the base, he controlled the narrative, and he controlled the news agenda of the country politically for 2 years, right up until he didn't. Yeah. And to Mia's point, they mess up the amendment on the budget. They've lost, you lose the election, lose your seat, screw up the budget amendment, have a defection, and now a resignation. There is a total absence of control right now.
And it's going to be a test of leadership for Mr. Poilievre, and as to how he will react to that latest news. It's a blow for the party, for Mr. Poilievre, who's trying to, present the party again as him being Prime Minister in waiting. He might wait a long time before it does happen if things continue, because the Liberals are getting closer to majority. The fact that Mr. Jeneroux is resigned, it's one more seat less. It's one seat less for the opposition parties to try to defeat and combine their forces to defeat the government. So yeah, there's one. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we're just one seat away from having enough control of the House of Commons.
And there is a possibility of at least one other Conservative that may cross the floor to the Liberals.
Yeah.
And that may actually convince that person to do so, given what happened to Mr.
And this, by the way, what I'm told, the scenario that was told to me could happen the day that we have the final vote on the budget.
Yeah. So look. We're all, your phone's going, my phone's going. But Bob, at least one more. So I spoke to someone today on the catching side of this, on the Liberal side of it. Adamant, it wasn't over, right? And we could still see something. Pointed to the break week, maybe. Yep. That's when you could see someone cross over. They get away from the pressure cooker of Ottawa. They can do it on home soil, explain to their constituents, their district association, whatever it is. I don't know. But you are also, I presume, hearing the similar thing that Mark Carney could get a majority without having to run another election, the same way Pierre Poilievre defeated Justin Trudeau without having to run an election.
Yeah, look, we've talk probably to similar people, but we do know that there is, described to me as we are in hot pursuit of others, but nothing has been closed yet.
No, I know.
Yeah. So these discussions are going on, and it's a big deal for somebody to cross the floor. They're friends with people in caucus. They've made a commitment to their constituents, and you have to weigh whether this is opportunism or this is a real sense of principle why you're doing this. And the Liberals are trying to convince these people that Mr. Carney represents their values and principles more than Pierre Poilievre, that he's serious about turning the country around, to dealing with the rising U.S. protectionism, and to develop the economy so that we're getting our resources to the world and getting world price. And he's also, I think, strategically been very careful, and he's been moving on a much tougher law and order agenda, which also appeals to Conservatives. So they have a message to Conservatives. You know, he is a progressive Conservative as a Liberal leader. And there's a room for you in the party if you come.
Mia, what are your thoughts on how imminent it might be, that there could be even more? Like, we had a week of deficits, defections, and maybe defenestrations. What are the odds of more from the Conservative caucus?
So tomorrow's the last day of this week, the last day they're going to sit until November 17th. I don't think necessarily, from what Bob said, that's what I've been hearing, is that there's talks underway, but nothing is signed, nothing is sealed. They're still having those conversations. That they still think that there is the possibility of that. Is it going to happen tomorrow? I think what happened today might sort of upend that apple cart. It might convince people to go. It might actually scare some off. You might see more resignations. I mean, there's many things that could happen. I think the number one word that I got when I was texting various people after this news broke was wow. Like, they just weren't expecting this particular thing to happen today. So tomorrow, I mean, anything could happen, but probably over the break week is when, if there's going to be any more floor crossings, they're going to be solidified over the next 6 days, when there's not as many eyes watching. Because I can also say,
I think Joelle is right that we're going to see it just when we come to vote on that.
But like, I mean, even in the House today, I can't remember who it was, but someone from the Conservative side, John Williamson maybe, was going over to talk to the Liberals about something, and he's like, I'm coming back, I promise. You know, like, there's a lot of tension going on right now.
You know, JD, when my kids go somewhere, sometimes I put an air tag in their coat so I can keep track of them. I mean, what does he need? About 140 of those right now to find out where the MPs are? I mean, what?
And if Monsieur Jeneroux had crossed the floor and joined the Liberals, it would have been a big prize for the Liberal Party, just to say that we can reach constituents that are also in, a bastion of the Conservative Party. Now, the next, I think, a big prize would be for them to secure somebody from Quebec, a Tory MP from Quebec, and have that MP cross the floor and join the Liberals. Why? Because for the Conservative, they still aim to grow in Quebec. They have their bastion in the Quebec City area, but if somebody in that area decides to jump ship with the Liberals, that could, to me, be the beginning of the end for Mr. Poilievre's leadership.
Do you think that is a live possibility, or are you looking at this? Because we heard Mr. Gaudin, the Quebec City area MP, deny, because his name was Madame Vienne. Also denied. Put out a video and a picture. You know, look, I'm hanging out. Everything's good.
And this picture was taken because the rumors were accelerating that Madame Vienne was about to cross. So Pierre Poilievre, the Quebec lieutenant, arranged that to happen so that, he would send the signal that she's not moving and going anywhere. But, what happened tonight may, like I said, have people to have second thoughts about their future.
But I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you're way more plugged in with Quebec politics than I am. So, I mean, do you have the sense that this could be the region from which the next breaking news event could happen?
It's a possibility. I mean, nothing is firmed up, but I'm told that Mr. Carney is not far away from those talks.
Mr. Carney's not far away from any talks with the Liberals right now.
And I think that we should also be cautious, but there might be a possibility of an Ontario member as well. People have been really working some of these Ontario MPs, Conservative MPs.
Yeah, so we've been hearing that as well. And people...
don't forget, this is Ontario is Doug Ford country.
Yep.
Doug Ford is a middle-of-the-road Conservative. He has no time for Pierre Poilievre.
So this is something I wanted to touch on because, we were talking about this earlier on the power panel. And when the beginning of the end of Justin Trudeau happened, it was a series of events that built on each other. It was the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup night when the Oilers lost to the Panthers. and they lost Toronto St. Paul's. This happened at the same time. Then it was a Salimar, Langley City, Cloverdale, the worst ever result in a urban seat for a sitting Liberal government in the Winnipeg by-election. That they were not expected to win, but they got like 4% of the vote. The caucus wrote a series of letters, and then Chrystia Freeland wrote the letter that did it. Right? Here we have now with Mr. Poilievre, he was inevitable and he was invincible. And now he's none of those things. He was 20, 30 points ahead, then he lost the election, lost his seat, has now lost a member and lost another member, and he's been in fights with the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia, the Conservative Premier of Ontario. Like, there are no allies, it seems.
No, and the difference between Mr. Trudeau was in power for 10 years, and people were sick of him. In the case, it's entirely different as an opposition leader. You don't get a lot of shots on this. Yep. And, you know, Mr. Poilievre is 20 points behind Mark Carney in terms of personal popularity. The Conservative Party is actually not doing that bad.
No, it's a strong brand.
The brand is good, but people don't like Pierre Poilievre, and he's not making it easy for people to like him. When he goes after the RCMP, when he blows the budget, failing to present the main amendment on the budget, which was, I don't think I've ever seen that happen.
Well, because one of the selling points of Mr. Poilievre from his supporters is his command of the House of Commons, right? He knows what he's doing, and this was it gave the Bloc.
Even the Bloc was shocked to have that opportunity.
Well, I mean, the joke I heard was even his amendment crossed the floor.
And and you know, the Conservative Party has a long history of party infighting.
Yep.
And we saw it, it's been going on forever, but we saw it with Scheer, we saw it with O'Toole. He didn't have that happen. Mr. Poilievre never had that when he first became leader until after the election came. Now he's facing this, and believe you me, this is not going to get any better for him.
Well, the remarkable thing is, Mia, to Bob's point, is like this is an opposition leader who's facing these sort of headwinds right now, right? As opposed to a 3-term, 10-year prime minister who led through a pandemic and deeply polarizing times. I mean, Mr. Poilievre, who knows where the caucus is right now, but the base is definitely there with him. He still has a lot of the supporters, but there's being palatable to your base and then being electable to Canadians. And, you know, these things may not affect him on the first point, but on the second point, it is a bit like that cascading narrative that Justin Trudeau went through.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at those polls with the Conservatives, who are just a few points back of the Liberals in most polls, neck and neck, really, and then you look at the numbers with Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney, it is not inconceivable that if a Conservative leader, Poilievre or someone else, could lower that gap, that 20 point on the leadership, that would overcome that 2 to 3 points, for the party to get them over the top. Right now, he hasn't been able to get the job done, and despite the problems that Mr. Carney has had since he took office, and there was, he has not also had, the best 6 months necessarily. He doesn't have a deal with the United States. The Canadian economy is struggling. Mr. Poilievre, we're not talking about the economy here today. We're not talking about trade or taraffs or even the budget today.
Well, we were trying to.
We were trying to.
I had a whole show.
But, to that point, everyone, if they're talking about Mr. Poilievre about this, they're not talking about his leadership. They're not talking about what he's putting on the table. They're not talking about what he's offering voters. It's not going to get him over the top.
And the way that Mr. Carney governs weakens the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, because Mr. Carney brought, as Bob mentioned, the party to a more center-right position. So many of the policies have been stolen by the Liberals from the Conservative Party. So it weakens, in a way, the leadership of Mr. Poilievre because of the change of direction of the Liberal Party, but also the secret talks that the Liberals are, encouraging to have with.
I don't think they're secret anymore. We'll call them private talks, maybe. It's not a secret.
It's a public-private partnership.
We have a secret club we don't talk about. It's called the Liberal Caucus. Want to join? This is. But Bob, I just wonder, how does this then change the approach, right? Because we did see a change in tactic. We did see. Some calibration of tone from Mr. Poilievre.
But it doesn't last very long.
Right. But now it's got to be even harder for him.
Well, I mean, but the big problem with this guy is that he only seems to have one message. He seems to be on one track, which is more conservative. And we all remember when Brian Rooney went over to Stornoway soon after Poilievre won the leadership. He said, look, Pierre, you got to go fishing where the fish are. Yep. And the fish are in the center, where most Canadians are.
And Mark Carney's got an old trawler just dragging the Grand Banks right now.
And that's exactly what happened after Justin Trudeau left and Mr. Carney came on board. All of a sudden you saw big chunks of women going to the Liberal Party, seniors going to the Liberal Party, a lot of people who just felt that Mr. Poilievre was too partisan, but also too far to the right.
Right.
He also is perceived as too negative, and I find it somewhat ironic that his biggest criticism of Mr. Carney and the speech he gave before the budget was that he didn't offer any hope. And I mean, you can disagree with that, but that was Poilievre's take on that speech, was that Mr. Carney wasn't offering people any hope. You have to offer people hope. But one of the biggest criticisms of Mr. Poilievre is that he's negative. He's not offering any hope. He's very doom and gloom. And that is, people also want to gravitate to someone who has something to offer them that will actually sort of help them climb out. And I think it was one of the messages that Chris d'Entremont said. He said, I don't just want to be yelling and screaming and railing against government. I want to be able to offer something and actually help things happen. And that's not coming from my caucus right now.
Well, you know, we had an interesting example of how you balance this. We had Scott Aitchison on the show last night. We tried to get Chris d'Entremont, but PMO is making him lay low. And Scott Aitchison, you know, he does not like the housing policies of this government. Mike Moffat, who Mr. Poilievre has attacked as a failed Liberal academic, was his word, has a very similar opinion to Scott Aitchison. He's a good faith critic of the policies. And Aitchison has said on the show, this could work, this could move the needle, this is not good enough, this is not ambitious enough. It's a blend of things and it builds a credibility. Yep. If everything is a failure and every problem in society traces back to your policies, it loses a credibility, JD, because these things aren't all caused by the actions of Mark Carney. You know what I mean? Or even Justin Trudeau. And that's what I wonder about the approach. What do they do now? Because when you're losing elections and losing people, can you continue with the purely aggressive napalm and nuke style of politics?
No. And especially since you also have somebody in Washington that is, you know, practicing that kind of politics, that is having such a devastating impact on our economy and polarizing people. So, and we've seen elections in the United States, in New Jersey and in Virginia, and the mayor of New York City, voters there rejected that kind of speech. So I think there needs to be some kind of introspection on the part of Mr. Poilievre to find out what's the right tone for the current moment.
But he's shown no indication he's willing
to do that.
And I know that,
but when he first arrived as a leader of the Conservative Party, he gave hope to a lot of young people. The young voters went to him.
Oh, he spoke to their frustration and their anger and their issues. And generational fairness is a massive problem.
It is.
In Western countries right now.
Yeah, and so he had a discourse that was well received by the young voters. Where is that discourse right now? You know, after making the criticism, you need to bring solutions, and that's what's lacking so far. And some of the solutions that the Conservative Party has been proposing have been stolen by the Liberals on several options, several files.
You know, Bob, it was Chantal Hébert who said this on The Bridge, the podcast with Peter Mansbridge, our old colleague, about how what Mark Carney presented when he appeared. I just wonder if this is what's playing out here. She said there's an appetite for seriousness in politics. And whether you agree with Mr. Carney or not, like you don't get to be the central banker of two G7 economies and prime minister if you're not a serious guy. And I remember a conversation I had with Tim Hodgson when he was here on the show. He said he was encouraged by just looking at the country all huddling together in the center. And that's how, if you are in the center, it's how you get a guy like Tim Hodgson to go into politics. You know what I mean? And that seems to be where the country is right now, where the government is right now. And I don't know if that's where the Conservatives are moving at this point.
Yeah, you know, look, this is all anecdotal, but when I talk to people, and I think we all have the same sense, is that people say, well, I like this Carney guy because he's serious. He's trying to fix the country, and then you go to the House of Commons and you've got Pierre Poilievre, who's a great performer in the House of Commons, but sometimes that doesn't mean you don't necessarily come across as a serious person because you're attacking the government, and to become a serious person you have to provide really good policies, but at times you have to tell the government we will support you on these policies because it's in the country's interest. Then you say, you know what, that guy's serious, and you know, I will take a real good look at him in the next election campaign because he's put the country before his own partisan interest.
Yeah, there's sort of a theory in sports that a coaching candidate who can win the press conference, but can they win the game? Right? And that's ultimately what really, not to reduce politics to sports, but look, just before we continue, a reminder of the breaking news. Matt Jeneroux's statement saying that I ran in the last election, hopeful that Canadians will put their faith in a team led by Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, offering a chance to change Canada's perception in our own country and around the world. I wanted desperately to play a role in that vision, although the outcome was not what I anticipated. I have great admiration for the many remarkable individuals who are elected to the House of Commons on both sides of the aisle, dedicate themselves to the betterment of our nation. I hope to have the opportunity to address the House one final time in the future. For now, my focus must turn entirely to my family and to the responsibilities that come with that. I saw you looking at your phone, Bob.
Yeah, I just, Brian Tobin just, a fellow Newfoundlander just texted me and say, you know, got to watch what's coming is the PQ government in Quebec. And who is the best person who would be capable of dealing with a PQ government? He's got a good point.
Well, you know, former Premier Tobin, you have my number 2, buddy. You know, like do a fellow Newfoundlander a solid. Me, I'm just kidding. But no, this is a very good point, right? National unity in the West and in Quebec could also be a big factor. Jeneroux's statement mentions family. He said to me in a text earlier in the show, Mia, that with what happened with the frenzy around Chris D'Entremont and all of these things and whatever else is happening behind the scenes, he didn't want to go through that. He didn't want to put his family through that. So he's just leaving. This is a difficult life in politics in this town. I mean, we see a guy like Jeneroux leaving with this sort of messaging. I mean, how should Canadians view that? What do we take from that kind of a departure?
Politics is a high-stakes business, and it's a higher-stakes business than it's ever been before. I mean, we see the attacks that most politicians go through, even if this stuff isn't happening, if it's just sort of a day-to-day normal day on the Hill, the kinds of attacks that they have to withstand are pretty intense. But when those attacks are coming from inside the House, when you can't trust the people around you, when you're worried about your leadership or your other caucus mates, that is just an untenable position for any MP, and you know, you can see why someone like Matt Jeneroux would be like, no, I'm out, see ya.
What struck me with the statement issued by Mr. Jeneroux is the fact that he's got admiration for people on both sides of the House.
Yes.
This is, you know, somebody who's rising above the fray, trying to send the message. There are good Liberals, there are good Tories, there are good MPs. Those people are there to serve Canadians. And so I find that very dignifying as a statement. And just hope that this statement will not be lost on people. That's how you should treat your colleagues, if they're Liberals, if they're Conservatives, or if they're the NEP. They are people and trying to serve the best of their knowledge the Canadians. Well,
you know, I'm reminded because Bob mentioned Brian Mulroney earlier going to Stornoway to meet with Mr. Poilievre. The day Ed Broadbent passed away, Brian Mulroney was in hospital. He passed not long after. I think I did maybe his last English broadcast interview because Rosemary Barton brokered it. He called into the show to praise his former competitor, as sick as Brian Mulroney was, right? Because it was like a month or so later, he had passed away. And I remember thinking, I can't imagine Trudeau or Poilievre doing the same thing, Bob, you know, 20-odd years into the future, you know, when something like that happened at that point.
Well, I can tell you there are so many examples of opposition or Liberal or NDP MPs whose parents passed away or whatnot, and you'd get a phone call from Brian Mulroney. I mean, Joe Volpe, whose parents came from Italy and they were working as, you know, manual labor, and his son ended up in the House of Commons. And when his father died, you know, who was the first phone call he gets from Brian Mulroney? Yeah. And I think that JD's point is that there is a lot of sacrifice from members of Parliament on both sides. We don't give them enough credit. They have to fly long distances, and they have to come back for Mondays. And when they go back to their ridings, they don't often get to spend much time with their families because they're doing constituency work.
Especially for MPs from Western Canada.
Well, in Newfoundland,
Labrador, these places. I'm going home for Christmas. It's cost me a fortune. It's taken forever. Look, the National Post has some reporting, and we have heard this as well, though CBC has not independently confirmed it. Well, I mean, broadly, we've all confirmed this. Jeneroux was seriously considering switching ranks to the Liberals, and what the Post is reporting, he even met with Prime Minister Mark Carney recently, multiple sources told the National Post. So
On Monday.
On Monday?
Yep.
Okay, well, look, there you go.
During question period.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah.
In the lobby, like with a lead pipe? Like, where did this happen?
In his office.
In his office, okay. Okay, because we had been hearing this, so Mia, you have also obviously heard this. I know Chris d'Entremont met with the Prime Minister on, Tuesday, right before he announced his, I'm trying to remember, the days are blurring together, but clearly it was pretty far advanced, his considerations, and this explains the pressure and now the resignation.
Yeah, and the pressure within the caucus. I mean, everybody was looking at everybody after Chris d'Entremont crossed. Who's next? Who's talking? And I mean, if journalists were making guesses as to who might be in line, I mean, the Conservatives would know better than anyone who might be in line, and that's some of what was going on. And it was just, again, you know, when the fight is happening behind closed doors within your own family, that kind of pressure, that it's explosive.
I just want to say that reporting in the National Post from Christopher Nardi, Stephanie Taylor, and Catherine Levesque, and confirmed by my two sources, JD Billabon's and JD, quick 20 seconds for you, and then Bob, and then we got to say goodbye.
Yeah, and the fact that this story is still going on, I mean, means that Mr. Poilievre's leadership might be more fragile than we thought. And remember this, Mr. Poilievre came back to the House of Commons thinking that he would be sort of campaigning to keep his position until the leadership vote that he has to face in January in Calgary. So the campaign is getting tougher.
Yeah. Okay, we got 30 seconds before the network takes it away.
Well, let's see what Mr. Poilievre has to say. He's been avoiding us, and he's got an event tomorrow in Toronto, and there'll be a lot of reporters there, and we'll watch him if he runs away from us. And for sure, there's probably going to be another defection.